Hey there. Welcome to the Pine Island Experience podcast. I'm Joanna Anderson with my husband, Trygve. Each of our episodes will be conversations with fellow Pine Islanders.
The goal of our podcast is to share with you our experiences, what we have found to be fun, and what makes the Pine Island experience so unique.
But, mishaps over the years, crazy things that I've done. I've closed up scissors in the sides of chairs before, just had to take the whole panel off. It's just did a perfect chair one time and was so proud of myself and turned it up on its side and I heard clunk. I've stapled my fingers to furniture before. My 50th birthday, I stapled my thumb to a chair. That's how I started my day on my 50th birthday. Yeah. Remember that one? Yeah. That was a bad one because I had to take and pull it. It was just and it was such a quick reaction that then it hurt. Yeah. I took myself to Culver's and got pretzel bites and a butter burger. That was my 50th birthday.
You were listening to Jeanine Williams describe some of the mishaps that have occurred while working, and one of the worst happened on her birthday. Jeanine, the owner of Material Green, has a background in graphic design, and she has been creating with textiles and upholstering since college. Jeanine finds unusual items and strives to make things once, turning it into a one-of-a-kind original. And now, here is Jeanine. With us today, we have Jeanine Williams, artist and owner of Material Green. Just opened in November, I believe, but that was a new location after restoring, after moving from Ian. And we'll get into that. But thank you, Jeanine, for coming. We appreciate you coming out here.
Thank you for having me.
Certainly. Well, we always do it the same way. Start out about you and your background, where you're from, where you went to school, where you worked before, and then eventually how did you find Pine Island? So go ahead, take it away, Jeanine.
Okay. Well, my parents moved here, and I don't know what year it was. They lived in Manasota Key. I was in Springfield, Missouri. They have video rental stores, and they had stores in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, where I grew up. And when they moved to Florida, they thought they were going to retire, and then they said they were bored. So then they decided to open more stores here, which they put one in Port Charlotte, which was close for them. And then they decided that the Fort Myers area needed one. And so they called me one day when all my friends were finishing college. Everybody was graduating, going their separate ways, and said, would you like to move to Florida? And I just said, sure, why not? And then after I hung up the phone, I was like, what did I just do? So I came down over Thanksgiving break and I spent a week in a rental car, and I drove all through Cape Coral. And coming from Springfield, Missouri, I lived in a house that was a historical house. The electricity was added after it was built. So I had outlets in the floor, dirt cellar, a lot of character. And Cape Coral was just all these concrete block ranch homes. It just didn't appeal to me. So I just kept driving, and I ended up in Matlacha like 2 days before I had to go back home and pack all my stuff to move here. And Islands Realty was right at the corner in the white stilt home or building. Anna Ream, really nice lady, was working that day. And she said, well, we have one rental, but it's really far out. She was kind of motherly to me. And she said, I don't know if you want to live that far out. She was trying to kind of discourage me. But I said, show me, because I don't want to show up with a U-Haul and no place to put it. So she showed me. It was at the very end of the island on Date Street, about 3 houses from the end off of 4th. And it was a guest house for a guy who lived in Chicago. His big house was next to it. And he was only there like 2 weeks out of the year. So it was kind of desolate. In the summers, I didn't have any neighbors, like 7 houses down. It was quite different than today. There was 2 police. I used to joke with my friends that we called it lawless land because you would count the sheriffs at Circle K, and then it was like there was no cars the rest of the way. You could drive on whatever side of the road. And, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there were times when you didn't see anybody on the road, and you could drive whatever side of the road you wanted.
Mhm.
It was very quiet, dark, and it was a cool place to live. Very different from where I came from.
So is that kind of like a family-owned Blockbuster then? I mean, that was the big national chain, but was that basically the business?
Well, it was a family chain. It was Super Video.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the name when they came to Florida. It was Showcase Movies in Missouri, and then it was Super Video in Florida. And, I worked for them for years, and then working for the family isn't always the easiest thing to do.
Right.
So I decided to branch out, and I worked for Williams-Sonoma doing display work for years, opened the store in the bell tower that's not there anymore. And that was a great job. And then I moved from there to David Weekley Homes, and I was their design manager until the market crashed in 2008. And that's when I started my own gig, because my husband said, you do all this for your friends, family. I did the model homes for David Weekley. I was given very small budgets once they learned what I was capable of doing. My budgets got smaller and smaller because I was spray painting furniture and, upholstering cushions and things to make it look the way I wanted it to look. But I didn't have the money to make it look that way. So once they recognized that, they would be like, "Oh, you can do this house for $5,000." It's like my budgets got very, very small. But anyway, it was a challenge, and I enjoyed it. And
You must have enjoyed that because you could do whatever you wanted. I mean, what would they say?
Yeah, it was a great company to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And the market changed, and so then my husband said, "Well, why don't you do it as a business?" So that's when I started in our garage. I had a sleeping bag. Our house, like I said, is a me house that became a we house. So we have a one-car oversized one-car garage. And so I would have a sleeping bag that I would pull out on my driveway during the day and upholster pieces that were bigger pieces that I couldn't do in the garage, and then drag them back in at night. And then, we partitioned it off and made part of it my sewing room. And then I started thinking, that I needed to be off the island because I was too far out here for my customers' clients. So then I relocated into the Cape, stayed there I was with a lady in North Fort Myers at a place called Vintage Market Mall and Salvage for a few years. And then she decided to dissolve that. My husband said, "Well, you either have to quit or find a place, get a job or find a place to move your business." So that's when I moved to the Cape, and I had a studio there for 5 years before I moved back to the island. It's been a great thing ever since.
Now you're happier in the island now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. So many people. Right now, I'm booked through May. I'm trying to get some help. It's just gone crazy. It's a great feeling. It's really...
And it is an artist community. People come here for art.
Yeah.
So it's perfect for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love creating anything with textiles, fabrics. Love to sew.
So was the design work then what we kind of now know as staging? But you were creating custom pieces. I mean, in my mind, and you can correct me, it's like once something's done there's like a warehouse of furniture and they just bring in what might be applicable to that floor plan. But it sounds like you were actually creating pieces then as part of that process?
Yes, because my budgets were small, I would be shopping thrift stores.
Okay.
And finding things, wicker pieces that I could make cushions for, dining seats. I would shop magazines and I would show them my ideas, and then they would give me these small budgets and say, "Well, this is how much money," or things like that. It was a challenge, and it was fun to do. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It makes it harder that way because you can't just go order something or pick something and say, you have to create it.
You have to find it somewhere.
Find it, create it. And, that's how we've lived a lot for a long time. I mean, thrifting, finding things, repurposing things. I love to reuse things that aren't fabrics for textiles. I find vintage fabrics. I took apart some caftan muumuu fabrics that I got at a garage sale one time, and I used those on I don't know how many fabrics or projects because the fabrics were just amazing colors and prints, and So I try to incorporate different things with fabrics.
That's a great idea, repurposing used clothing.
Oh, yeah. And there's so much cool stuff that, you don't find it today. People try to recreate it, but it's not always the same. The old nubby bark cloth that, with the floral patterns. Now that's so sought after. It's very expensive. But whenever you can find that at a reasonable price, even if it's moth-ridden draperies and you can use parts of it that are still, good and try to do.
All right, since you said draperies, I have to ask, were you inspired by Gone with the Wind where they took drapes to make the dress?
or the Carol Burnett episode where she's wearing the drapery rod on her shoulders.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Fabric's great because you can, well, let me back up. My sister's here visiting me and I'm trying to teach her several things. She doesn't sew, trying to push her to come and be my helper, my apprentice. And I was teaching her how to make cording. I said, this job needs 14 yards of cording. She's like, oh, I can do that. I said, okay, you cut the fabric on a bias, you do. And then she's sitting there and she's trying to make it so perfect. And I said, if you mess up, it's okay because you can take it apart. You can do it again. I said, the only thing that's a done deal is if you cut it wrong,
right.
You can remake it. And so you can find all these things that are something else and use the fabric and make it into, draperies or pillows or bedspreads or rugs or, there's a lot of things that can be used in upholstery that aren't intended for upholstery, but you can use it that way.
And when did you first get introduced to sewing?
I was 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. My mom was having a garage sale and we had a sewing room upstairs. And I asked her, I said, will you please show me how to sew or to thread the sewing machine? But she was kind of frustrated because she was busy doing something else. But she showed me and I sat up there all day. I picked a Vogue Peter Pan collar blouse as my first project. I wish I still had it today because I would like to see how my quality was then versus, but it's, one of those things that you didn't keep, not thinking I should save this. But yeah, I love to sew. My grandma, my whole family, they've always, encouraged me to sew and have been sewers. So it was just something that I picked up, I guess, from.
That was a great year to learn to sew too, when you were that age. Everything, it probably interested you.
Oh, yeah.
So you were making your own clothes.
I used to go to the mall and study things, and I would buy things, take the tags out of them, because I didn't want people to know that I made my clothes. Mm-hmm. And I would put tags in them so that they thought that they were store-bought clothes. And I would copy patterns and things that I had that I liked and make duplicates of it. Yeah, I did a lot of crafty stuff.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I made, and this is something that I hated, ball gowns, prom dresses.
Oh my gosh.
Working with my brother's girlfriend, she was prom queen, and it was bridal silk. And we did the whole top of the dress. It was hundreds of bows we tied with ribbon and sewed, and that was long nights and frustration. And so, I decided furniture is a little bit more, easier to work with. You don't have anybody moving or talking, or it's just a chair or a couch, and you can, work on it for hours. It was less frustrating for me to do.
So when you formed the company, how'd you come up with Material Green then as the name of the business?
Well, it was originally Material Girl.
Ah.
And I had a scissors in my logo, and the M had a bolt of fabric going off of it. So it wasn't Material Girl, it was fabric material. And then I was in Burdines one day, which is now Macy's, showing my age here, but Burdines one day, and I saw Material Girl. Madonna started a company with her daughter, and it was in Burdines. And I thought, oh my gosh, before I get slapped with this cease and desist, I better change my name.
But you were there first.
Yeah, but she has a lot more money than I did. Yeah, so I was at the Pine Island pool, and I was, thinking one day, and it's like, well, my business is green, because I repurpose, so Material Green. So that's where it came from.
That is I would have never guessed something like that.
And a lot of people don't get it, but that's where it came from.
So did you always want to own your own business? Because, that's kind of a big step. As much as people might not, and it sounds like you like your jobs. I don't mean you personally, but even when people don't like what they're doing or who they work for, there is that comfort is that there's the guaranteed paycheck. Somebody else is doing accounting, the sales and the market, you have your role, whatever it is. It completely changes then when you are there's nobody to go to when it's your business anymore, right? You're probably doing it all when you're a small business, as well as you're making all the decisions and you're doing all the accounting and all the planning and the strategies. What kind of, was it the impetus of the market crashing and you just wanted to do more, or was that something you'd always dreamed of?
I wouldn't say it was something I always dreamed of, but I think a lot of it came from my parents having their own business.
Okay.
And our family, we all worked for my parents.
Mm-hmm.
We had jobs, and we didn't, like when I was in high school, I worked at the Heritage Cafeteria. I was bussing tables, and, my mom's like, oh, come work for us. Come. No, I wanted to be independent and have my own job. But, it's like when you, just having the freedoms and the things, the control. I'm a control freak. That's why I'm so about doing my furniture. And, it's like, I want it a certain way, so my sister's like, just let me do this. Well, let me show you first. let me, so I'm a little bit of a control freak. My husband will tell you that. But, I didn't really dream that I would have a business. It wasn't something that I was striving for. But then when I lost my job, it was kind of out of necessity, because there weren't a lot of jobs. And to be honest, I started with selling my design wardrobe on eBay to supplement my upholstery business until I could tip the scale and go the other direction. I was selling all kinds of used clothes on eBay, and that's what kept me going until I started getting jobs to do upholstery.
Well, that was smart.
Yeah, I just sat at my dining. My daughter was little. Well, and actually, like 2 months after I lost my job, I totaled my car. So my husband was working out of town, and I was like, I don't need to buy a car. I just sat the whole click and ship. I just sat there at our dining table with my laptop, and I ordered boxes. They delivered them to my house. I would pack them, ship them. They'd pick them up off my porch. It was ideal.
You were one of the first work from home.
It was great. It was great. My daughter was 4 years old, and we just hung out, and then I would purge my closet. I'd go back again. I'd be like, oh, all that stuff sold, because I had this wardrobe where I had to dress every day for an office, and I didn't need any of that. So, I had these shoes and this purse, and then I'd go back and I'd find more. Oh, well, I don't need this, and just keep paring it down, because we have so much stuff that we don't need. It can be such.
Did the upholstery then, was that a natural extension of enjoying materials and textiles and so forth like that? Or how did you come to, working with, that's a different part of, I guess, working with those materials, because that's a skill unto itself, I think.
Well, I started taking things apart, studying how they go together. My dad gave me, when I was in college, this great pair, which would probably be very sought after today, but at the time I thought they were the most hideous things. They were a pair of couches from JCPenney's that were very retro, like velour velvet with ferns printed on them. You can picture it. It was kind of like a rust color, burgundy, hideous. I hated them, but they were comfortable, and they had these straight lines. So I thought, how hard would it be to reupholster those? And so I took them apart, and I went to a store, FM store. It's a place in Springfield, Missouri that all my friends hated, and it was an insurance salvage store where they would buy out businesses. They always had a lot of fabric. So I would go through and dig out through the fabrics, and I found this red stripe fabric, and I upholstered those couches with this red stripe fabric. And so from that point, I was kind of like, I got the bug, and I wanted to do more, because you'd see all these great things, but they were, worn out or ugly or whatever. And over the years, I just started, taking things apart, studying how they upholstery. I feel like it's a kind of a marriage of sewing and a little bit of engineering. Like, you have to understand how things are going to work and pull and wear, and, how it's going to lay on the lines of the piece of furniture. So it was just kind of a trial and error for years.
It takes some strength too when you try.
It's hard on your body. Yes, I have arthritic fingers and I've had shoulder problems and back problems. And my husband now he tries to do all my stripping for me. He comes after he does his day of work. He stops and strips chairs or whatever. I put a big TV in the room where I do the upholstery to kind of entice him. Anything that he can watch on television, usually, well, if there's a TV, he can watch all his sports stuff. He can watch,
A small refrigerator.
Yeah. Yep. Planned all that for him.
Well, I'm not surprised either with Material Green, because I think one of your byline or something on Facebook or your byline is like re.do, re.new, re.use.
Yes.
You're repurposing, and you started repurposing when you were young.
Oh, yeah.
So that green is actually a great word to have in there with material.
Yeah, very resourceful. Our whole family has been that way. I feel like I was kind of raised that way, to use what you have. And, I try to do that with the designs that I put together. If you've been in my shop, the way that I stage things and use things unexpectedly, it doesn't always have to go. I feel like it doesn't always have to match, or
no, you don't want to be matchy.
I want it to be interesting, look curated over time. Just kind of a different eclectic feel.
Well, you talk about one of a kind too. So, and that's amazing too, because it's like once it's created, there's no other like it, right?
Yes, I try to do things once, unless it's a pair. And I had a situation years ago where a dear friend of mine, she likes things, very old things. She has a lot of really cool vintage antique stuff. And she came in with a whole stack of bark cloth fabric. And they were little parts and pieces. And she said, Jeanine, I've had these for years. If anybody can do something with them, you will. So I left them on my table and I looked at them for a while and walked past them. And, a month went by and I started laying them out. And I found a channel back chair, which has all the different padded areas down the back. And all these fabrics were florals. And so I thought, everybody loves florals. So I put all the florals together on one chair. The lady that bought the chair, and keep in mind, all these fabrics were like from the 40s. So finding more of this is impossible. You couldn't have. So the lady that bought the chair, she said, I love the chair. The only thing is I need another one. And I said, well, there's no way. But I sourced a chair that was similar. They didn't match, but it was similar. And I spent hours upon hours on eBay trying to find fabrics that were the same, like weight in pattern or colors. And then I had some small pieces of the fabrics, and I did it, but it's not something that, I don't plan to do that when I make my things. It's, it's kind of a one and done, and you have that chair, and that's your art piece, your original piece of furniture.
It's special. So she must have liked it.
Oh, she loved them. Yeah. But she said, I need a chair for my husband. So I need another one. I'm like, well, how am I going to do that?
Stop.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, let's talk about what you have. I've looked at all your pictures. You have a beautiful Instagram account. Those pictures are stunning. And then you have Facebook. Those pictures are lovely. Let's talk about what you have in there. Do we start with the pillows, or where do you want to start? The furniture?
Well, I have a collection of things that now there are some things in the shop that I did not make. A small percentage because my husband said you can't make everything, which I try. And if I had 46 hours in a day, I would. But, the reality is I can't make everything. But I make pillows. I tried to do things that were kind of more island themed, Florida, old Florida, wall hangings that I source, antique tablecloths. I like to find those and hang them as, like a art piece on the wall. Pillows, I had this idea to make a Pine Island map after the hurricane. And I thought, I'll create it with my fabrics, all my little scraps of fabrics, and make the land mass green, a pattern fabric, and the background blue for the water. And then I needed to put the names of the places on the map. And, in my mind, I told my husband, I said, I'll just sit and embroider these by hand while I'm watching TV. And he's like, are you crazy? You know how long that's going to take you? Because it says, Pine Island, St. James City, Matlacha, all the names of the places. I just put it in a bin after I made these and thought, I guess it won't work because I don't have the time to sit and do that. And I called embroidery places in Cape Coral and nobody wanted to touch it because I said, well, I only have it's a project that I'm starting. I only have 8 or 9 of them. Mm-hmm. And because I wasn't doing 50 ball hats and then one day I was at my shop and a lady came in and introduced herself and she says, well, I do custom embroidery. I'm like, oh, you do? Would you like to do a project for me? So I found a lady on the island who does
excellent
embroidery, and she embroiders all of them for me. And I make them into pillows. Mm-hmm. I make them into little footstools. And I would like to put one on a chair, but that hasn't happened yet. So that's one of the things that I make.
So she just walked into your shop and said, I'm here,
Yeah, it was,
wow.
It was kind of like a perfect find, that we found each other.
Well, it was meant to happen, right?
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is she used to have a shop downtown where she sold vintage linens. I had clients who bought fabric from her years ago for me to make into bedspreads and other things. So we kind of connected years ago, but didn't know it. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a cool thing that we met, and now she does my embroidery for me. So
that's wonderful. How long has she been doing that for you?
We just started. It's been less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you just taken off.
Yeah, those have been really, really hot items that people have liked.
Another good reason you came back to the island. She wouldn't have come in your shop.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Now you have pet dog beds and you have pet footstools, and tell us about.
Yes, the dog beds, East Lake chairs. I don't know if you're familiar with early 1900s, beautiful carvings and detail, but they're small chairs. And as chairs, people don't typically want them because at that time people were smaller. So the chairs were smaller. Well, now they're kind of like a large children's chair is how they look as chairs. And, it's just a shame because you see them on the side of the road. You see them in thrift stores. Nobody wants them, but they're beautiful. And so I started thinking about it. It's like if you cut the legs off and you brought the back down, you can make it into like a little pet bed. So that's what I did. And I had a friend on the island who does woodworking. He cut them down for me and made them into pet beds. So that's something else that I have at the shop. And then I upholster them, put a seat on them, and make them into pet furniture.
Now, do the dogs match a dog that they're trying to match, or is it just the same breed? That I think I saw different breeds like on a pillow, but that isn't like custom.
Oh, no, those are tapestries that I order from Belgium.
Okay.
And I take them and put them on the backs of chairs.
Okay.
Or on footstools. But they could be put on the pet beds. I can do those custom. I have a stack of frames waiting when I have some free time that are all built and ready that I'm dying to dig into, but it's just not something that I've had a chance to do.
You just haven't had the time with everything you're doing.
Well, it's like trying to get out all the custom work. It's like a list of, I tell them it's going to be May, and they're like, okay, put me on your list.
I read on Facebook, it was so touching. The person said, I don't care. I think it was something like this. She didn't care what you decided. And that she was leaving probably to go back wherever. And then she said she just hoped they'd be ready when she came back. And you just surprised her. Do people do that? Say, here, make it better?
Oh, yeah. I have customers who drop off patio cushions and things, leave them when they go up north. The custom jobs where they want me to be very creative, I've had several that just say, just do your thing. But I always have a little interview with them of what do you like? What's your favorite color? What's your least favorite color? Do you like flower? I've had people tell me no florals, no animal print, which is really hard because I love to use animal print with everything. I think zebra, leopard, it's timeless.
Yeah.
It works with a lot of things. But I get that some people aren't as adventurous or, bold. So there's all different styles, and I get that. So, I did a pair of Lazy Boy recliners in all neutrals. The outside was a vintage crewel fabric, but they were all beige and cream tones.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't color. And then it was like a cognac velvet cording, but we did do zebra on the insides of the chairs. So
that made you happy.
Yeah. But, it was nice to do just the combination and putting things together. Even though they were neutral fabrics, I still enjoyed doing it. So
Lampshades?
Lampshades, yes. I started in my own home because I didn't want any white lampshades. So I started covering all my lampshades. And then people started asking me, can you make a lampshade? I said, yes, I can make a lampshade. There's different types. If you have a hardback shade, you're more limited because that's what holds the frame of the top and the bottom of the shade together. If you have a full silk shade, you've got a full frame, so you can do a fabric lining and an outside. It's hard on your hands. It's a lot of hand sewing, so it's time consuming, but it's something that, I looked at it, studied it, and thought, I can do this. So I did.
That's genius.
It's fabric, when it all comes down to it, you work with fabric, and if you understand how it works, you can do a lot of things with it, a lot of different things.
Well, you do find lamps in thrift stores, but they don't have shades a lot of time. And then if you go and price shades, it's very expensive.
Right.
So if you can find a shade that'll work and then bring it to you, I can see why they'd be very happy.
Be a custom shade.
Yeah. Oh, towels. I've seen the towels. Those are you buying those?
Now the towels, those were done by Patty.
Okay.
The embroidered towels in my sister's little suite that we made. That was something cute. That, and we have one bathroom in our house. So it's kind of, I thought this is kind of a purpose. It was something that had a necessary because, everybody's got their hook with their towel on it with one bathroom, and then which towel is yours. So I thought it was kind of a way to give that boutique hotel feel for them. And then it would be useful with the one bathroom.
It looks lovely. So special. No wonder she was very emotional when she saw it.
Well, and, we talk every day, probably several times, and it was really hard to keep it under wraps. I almost blew it several times because she'd be like, what are you working on? What are you painting? You're painting. What are you painting? Oh, the trim in our bedroom. Oh, you're making drapes? Yeah. I'm working on, it's like everything that I would say. I would say it was for somebody else, but it was for them.
You did surprise them then.
Yep.
Nice. Congratulations. That's hard.
It was hard.
Very hard.
It was hard. And my husband, he said, I started out simple too. And, he always says that I make things, it has to be so grand or whatever. But I was trying to be simple, and he was the one pushing me. Like, I was on Facebook Marketplace shopping trundle beds, and my husband's like, we're not young anymore. Get them a real bed, all these things that, and so I kind of joked with him because I said, you're the one that's always telling me to calm down and, make it easier. And I was trying to keep it simple. And
well, you work well together.
Yeah.
Done a lot.
He's a big help. Big help.
Do you have any unusual stories of a request or maybe something very sentimental that you did for someone? Or
over the years, oh my gosh, there's been so many crazy things. I've had people come to me to make different chairs that belong to family members. There was a lady who I made they were rugs or something into pillows. That was years ago. There's been, a lot of sentimental things that people hang on to, and they don't know what to do with them. And so, we make them into pillows or they bring me frames that have been stowed away for years that are chairs that belong to somebody and they didn't know what to do with. And things that they wouldn't typically use in their homes because it's not their style. So we make it something that fits with what they're going to decorate with or what have you. But that, mishaps over the years, crazy things that I've done. I've closed up scissors in the sides of chairs before, just had to take the whole panel off,
Well, that's why surgeons count the instruments before and after. You're laughing, but,
And sponges.
Sponges, yeah.
Did a perfect chair one time and was so proud of myself and turned it up on its side and I heard clunk.
Uh-oh, something's inside.
I've stapled my fingers to furniture before. My 50th birthday, I stapled my thumb to a chair. That's how I started my day on my 50th birthday. Yeah.
That had to have hurt.
Remember that one? Yeah. That was a bad one because I had to take and pull it.
It probably hurt a lot more coming out than going in, though.
It was just and it was such a quick reaction that then it hurt. Yeah.
Oh my. And then you couldn't work probably for a while.
No, I took myself to Culver's and got pretzel bites and a, butter burger. That was my 50th birthday. That was a memorable one.
Wow.
And of all the stuff you have in your store, is there something that's more popular than everything else? I know you said you're backed up on custom work, but are pillows kind of a fast mover, or is it kind of evenly distributed?
I would say the pillows and the little footstools are probably the most popular thing. I think that, they're easy things to fit in with your decor or to put just, the little round footstools as a decor thing, or if you want to use them, it's an easy thing to fit someplace. Bigger pieces take, I think, more time for people to, think about how they're going to place it. Or sometimes I have, customers come in and say, I absolutely love that. I'm taking it home today. But, other times it's a bigger purchase. So it's something that you have to think about a little bit before you make that purchase.
Well, and I've heard if you love something that much, you'll find a place for it.
Bunny Williams.
Oh, okay. Is that where it was
famous
from?
Decorator Bunny Williams said, if you love it, it will work. Yeah. And, I told that to my husband several times because I would come home with all these different fabrics. And, I try to stay kind of sedate. What do you think about this? What do you think? It's just, I couldn't stay flat to just blues and whites or whatever. It's like I'd find all these amazing fabrics. I love this and I love that. And so, I have a lot of different things in my house, but I love all of it. So it makes me happy. And I feel like if you love it, it'll work.
Now, in terms of sourcing, is that mostly thrift stores or restores or those kinds of things? Or is it internet-based, or is it just kind of a mix? Because you're probably not going to you might get some stuff you want at a commercial place that sells fabrics, but it sounds like you're more historical fabrics or antique fabrics, and those probably aren't sitting in a regular retail store.
No,
that's my assumption.
I shop, I always go to the odd places at the thrift stores and look for fabrics. But, like I said, I've used muumuus, caftans, you have to have, sometimes I like to unframe like the little embroidery things and use those that, needle points that people frame. You can take those out of the frame and use those on pillows or chairs, or those are small things that you can use. But, you've got to have a sizable amount of fabric. And, that's how I started with mixing all the fabrics together, because I would find all these amazing fabrics. And a lot of people don't realize the expense of some of these fabrics. You can buy fabrics. There's a fabric that I have on arm pads on a chair in my shop. It's called Jacquard Tiger, and it's a Schumacher fabric, and it's $500 and something a yard. And so, I joke with my daughter, when you're a famous artist, I want a sofa upholstered in Jacquard Tiger because, the fabric alone would be like $8,000 or something crazy, So you find all these amazing things, but you can't afford to. A fully upholstered chair takes 7 to 8 yards of fabric minimum. So, you figure even if you're in the $100 to $150 range per yard, that's a lot of fabric. So you find these amazing remnants of these fabrics that are affordable, but they're very expensive fabrics, but you don't have enough to do the whole thing. So I would look at all these fabrics together and I'd be like, those look amazing together. That would make a great chair. And this is where my graphic design background comes in, which is what I went to school for, was graphic design. But, the colors and the patterns and all the different things married together. And if you use, like a big floral and then a stripe and then, a small little dot or something. You can put all these different things together. And yes, it's sometimes very busy or crazy depending on what you like, what you don't like, but they don't fight with each other. You just have to kind of balance out, and you can put all of them together. And that's how I started doing this, because I had all these great pieces of fabric, but, I couldn't spend $1,000 or, to buy 8 yards of it to do a whole chair or whatever. So
where would you get the courage to cut? I mean, you have this expensive fabric. It would be so scary to cut.
You measure it and you check and you double check and you check again before you cut it. Yeah.
Have you ever stepped back and think about it? Because it sounds like a lot of what you end up sourcing are things that people threw away, don't care, or you're maybe the only one buying it in the store. And I know there's one man's junk is another man's treasure kind of thinking, but to have that vision, to be able to say, I could put this with that, because otherwise you wouldn't buy it, right? I mean, and which is probably why hundreds of thousands of us go through and go, well, look at that crap. I mean, that's never going to move. And
Right.
you're going and going, this is great.
Yeah, my daughter jokes because she says when we go to a thrift store, she's like, well, most people aren't looking for what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So it really does work out well, because you find things that a lot of people do pass by because it's in a certain condition or, it's on the side of the road. I mean, the stuff that people throw away, and since it's become so popular to repurpose things, it's not as much as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, amazing trash finds. My husband calls our house Kiwanis chic, or it was before the hurricane, because it was like everything came from this thrift store, or that thrift store, and it had a story. And, this is how we, find things and make interesting things.
So you just touched on your daughter and her. Or you want to talk a little bit about her? And I believe there's an upcoming show. Or
Yes, she has a show that opens tomorrow at the Sydney Burn. She has the Capitol Gallery. The upstairs is all her.
How proud are you? I mean, oh my goodness.
Beyond.
Yes.
Beyond. She went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, did a semester, and, she received a very healthy scholarship, which she decided to come back home and put that on hold. And, it was kind of touching because all these kids that grow up out here are kind of like, I want to leave. I want to get out of here. This is so boring. This is, she was on the track of, I want to live in a big city. That's why she never got a driver's license, because she said, I'm going to live someplace that has transportation I'm not going to need to drive. And, we, as parents, we're the old geezers that, think about where you grew up. This is a great place. And just terrified of turning her loose in Chicago, because you couldn't be more vastly different, the island versus Chicago.
Correct.
So, but, when she would come home for visits, she came home a couple weekends during that semester, and, we'd pick her up from the airport, and she could be like, Mom, it's so quiet. And then I would hear these little things about, I really missed Florida. And I wanted just like, oh my gosh, So I started, when I was putting the new building together, she started calling me like several times a day. And I thought, what is up? And she said, I don't know if this is the school for me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like one of the most sought after art schools, but she says, I just don't know that it's the school for me. And I think I want to come home for a semester and just paint, which is her. I mean, she's an amazing painter, and her paintings look like photographs. And she likes to incorporate all these vintage toys that's her thing, that she goes to the thrift stores to find. Anything 80s, which whoever thought the 80s would be, sought after, desirable, but anything 80s. She has a Depop business, which she sells a lot of 80s clothes, and she does very well at that. And then I had a storage room in my shop. There's a very large picture frame that has I had a lot of my jobs that I did over the years printed on Inkify to look like Polaroids. And I have them all hung on this And we turned it into a barn door. And behind that barn door is Ava's studio. And she's like, Mom, I want to paint it all black. So she painted the walls and the ceilings black. And she just immersed herself in that studio for a month and a half, cranking out her paintings for her show. I mean, she had quite a few. She wanted new pieces. And she felt like that was something that she wasn't getting to do as much as she wanted to in Chicago. Although she was in this amazing dorm. There's pictures of it on my my Facebook. And when we moved her in on State Street, this amazing studio on the top floor, I wanted to go there. You know, the things that they make fabric.
Oh.
They have a wood shop. I mean, it was just unbelievable. But, you know, and maybe it was too soon, and she can always go back. It's on hold for 5 years. So, you know, just take a step back. And she's done some cool things in my shop. She does block prints, and she's made some neat things on my fabric scraps, you know. And now she's starting to appreciate and wants to learn to sew. So possibly I can reel her in, because for years I've been trying to teach her what I do, because I said, when I'm dead, who's going to do this? It's a dying art. I would like to teach it to somebody, but there was no interest. But now she's, you know, wanting to modify clothing and do different things. She screen prints patches, and she sews them on clothes. And so there is hope that she might come over to the other side maybe and help me and learn what I do. So
That's sweet.
So if we go back to Material Green, what's the actual physical address for your location, phone numbers, ways to contact you so you can get more custom work?
Yeah, I'm at 5101 Pine Island Road, Northwest, Bokeelia, Florida. I'm directly across from the Calusa Key Publix. My phone number is 239-910-5920. And my email is materialgreen@comcast.net. I'm on Facebook as Material Green and Instagram as well. Right now, I'm 11 to 4, Wednesday through Saturday. Mondays and Tuesdays, I have by appointment or chance. I try to stay away on Sundays, my one day. I want to expand those hours eventually and have more retail hours. But right now, I'm trying to make stuff and get caught up. When I moved, it put me behind about a month and a half, because I didn't have a place to work. It was, rehabbing another building that was flooded, and dealing with the county. So those things take time, and it put my work behind a little bit. But I have a lot of understanding people, thankfully, that are patient and will wait for me to get caught up. So
yeah, your reviews, they don't care how long it takes, because you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's a huge compliment.
yeah, I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So grateful.
Well, we're grateful you're on the island, and we'll be over to see you soon.
Yes.
But we could talk to you all day. This is fascinating. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed our Pine Island Experience podcast. If you have any ideas for us, people to interview, or any comments, please feel free to email them to us at pineislandexperience@gmail.com. That's pineislandexperience, all one word, @gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, and you may subscribe to this podcast using all the major catchers like Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and remember, island life is a constant vacation. We'll see you on the next podcast.